It's an honor and privilege. I would like to thank Professor Pandey and also Sudhir, who gave me this opportunity to speak in front of you. So I'll be speaking on this what you call multilateral world order and India-Russia ties. Since India-Russia ties has already been spoken by Professor Nikulin, so I'll focus rather on multilateral aspects of the world order and placing the India-Russia ties into that context. So first, one of the issues that I find with the issue of multilateralism is how do you understand multilateralism? In today's context, the world order that you have seen, that you have witnessed, that is in crisis. Multilateral world order today is certainly facing the crisis. What is happening today, what is that? Sorry. Yeah, so what is happening today? That's okay, I can see it from there. Yeah. So what you see today, that multilateral world order that you have witnessed, that you have studied, that you have researched on, that is facing a major crisis today because the post-Cold War world order was essentially created by the Western countries dominated by the United States. But what you see today, that all the institutions that were created in the post-war situation, those institutions are facing massive crisis because the master, the hegemon, is withdrawing from most of the institutions. You have seen the way Trump signed the executive order, and he withdrew from Paris climate change, he withdrew from WHO, he withdrew from not supporting at least the WTO. He is also sending a very hardcore nationalist representative to United Nations, and he's also not supporting NATO. So you can imagine what is happening. The way you have understood the world today, that is in crisis, that is changing. Whether it's good or bad, that you can decide later. But for the time being, just remember the way we have seen the world, the way we have analyzed the world is not the kind of world that we're going to see in our lifetime. So what is happening, unfortunately, that we generally say that Western institutions are in crisis, multilateralism is in crisis, but I see slightly differently here. Yes, Western-led institutions are in crisis, but some of the other institutions are thriving. Be it, say, for instance, BRICS, be it Shanghai Cooperation Organization, and take any number of institutions which have been created by China. They are thriving in comparison to the Western institutions. So it's not the the one generic explanation that institutions are declining. Yes, Western-led institutions are declining, but non-Western institutions are thriving in today's world, and that's an important hypothesis that I would like you to remember. And when you see the world in the coming years, you have to remember this aspect of changing. That shows a kind of transition because earlier those institutions were supported by the countries which had finances, which has military. But now what is happening, that the non-Western institutions are doing well because they are being supported by countries which have finances, military power, economic power. So they are doing much better compared to the declining institutions of the West. So that's one thing that I would like you to remember. Yes, and coming to India, India has been joining all kind of institutions, and that's a sign of a middle power, that's a sign of emerging power, and it has not created its own brand of multilateralism. The way, for instance, United States created, the way, say, for instance, China created, Russia also is very active through Eurasian Union, through Shanghai Cooperation Organization, BRICS. But India does not have its own brand of multilateral institution. Yes, it has created, but they cannot be considered to be very successful. Say for instance, BIMSTEC, say for instance, SAARC is in decline, SAARC meetings are not taking place, so there is no institution in the South Asia which can be called really multilateral institution. So that's the one, that's one of the issues. If you want to become a world power, and the way all the world powers have become superpowers, you have to create regional institutions. If you do not have a regional institution which is really powerful, US did it, Soviet Union did it, Russia did it, China is doing it. And if I ask you what are the institutions that India has created in terms of multilateral institutions, which in terms of sharing values, etc., you will be at loss at answering my question. So that you have to remember when you think of multilateralism. So what I'm going to do today very quickly, that I'll talk about what is multilateralism and where are we headed. Second, how do we make sense of multilateralism as a concept, as an idea. Third, what is India's position on multilateralism? And fourth, that how you place India-Russia relation in the broad India-Russia multilateralism, because in the earlier lecture, Professor Nicolin he discussed a lot of issues of India-Russia relations. So I'll not be repeating, sir. I'll be focusing on multilateral aspect of India-Russia relations. Yeah. So if you talk about the definition, this is one thing that the students of JNU, they must remember, that when you talk of the definition, all the definitions, if I ask you, you will give some Western definition of multilateralism. And what is the definition? The first definition is, say for instance, what you're reading here is the Eikenberry definition, where multilateralism in the simplest possible terms talks about cooperation among 3 countries minimum. You can have more countries, but minimum 3 countries are required. But the definition of Cohen was modified by John Ruggie. John Ruggie, as you know, is a constructivist scholar. And what he said, that what matters when it comes to defining international institutions is not just the cooperation among 3 institutions, it's also the norms, values, and the regimes which are being created, and that matters a lot. So I'm taking the definition of multilateralism away from some of the people who argue that it's the power that matters and multilateral institutions are created for the sake of power. I do not agree with that. Say for instance, why Paris climate change is taking place. How do you define Paris climate change? Why US is withdrawing when it's dominating the world through these multilateral institutions, be it IMF, United Nations Security Council, or say World Bank, etc. So US itself is withdrawing. So multilateralism or multilateral institutions from international politics, in my view, should not be seen from the power and state sovereignty perspective. That's an erroneous definition. Realism takes it. All of you know it. Realism is a school of thought in IR. But in my view, that's a very partial explanation of multilateralism. It's not that the power doesn't matter. It's not that the power does not play any role in multilateral institutions. But I would like you to see multilateral institutions or multilateralism from a slightly different perspective, which goes beyond the power. So here, the definition that you saw, probably the best definition that I see, either you take Eikenberry's definition or the definition of John Ruggie. John Ruggie says what? He says that it's not merely a coordination among 3 or more states, but certain principles of ordering relations among those states which distinguish multilateralism from other forms of interstate relations. These organizing principles entail, mark my words here, these organizing principles entail first, generalized principles of conduct. Generalized, which means it's general for all the parties, all the stakeholders. Second is indivisibility, that whatever applies to you will apply the same to the other person. And third is diffused reciprocity. So generalized principle is generalized, the principles are general for each and every country. The second is this indivisibility, that whatever applies to you will apply. There's no division as far as, there's no hierarchy as far as these members are concerned in terms of principles and norms. And third is diffused reciprocity. What is happening here, that diffuse reciprocity means that you might lose something at this point of time, but you might gain in the future. So you cooperate not because you're losing something or because you're expecting immediate gain. You cooperate because you know that even if I lose something at this moment, I'm going to gain through cooperation with other countries. Say for instance, immediately if you talk of the climate change, you might lose some revenue because you're trying to transition from the conventional energy to green energy, but you know that the long-term benefit of that kind of cooperation is very high. And that's how, so that refers to diffused reciprocity. And every state, it might gain or lose at some point of time, but generally there is all the states will gain in the long term. So that's what I mean by diffused reciprocity. And indivisibility, for instance, when you talk of the term indivisibility, say for instance the way WTO operates, most favored nation clause, which means that all the states will get equal treatment from all the other countries. So you cannot have tariff on one country and the other country. So that's what that is meant by as what you call indivisibility. Similarly, NATO attack on one country, the concept of collective security, that if there is an attack in one country, that will lead to a general attack that will be treated as an aggression on the entire NATO. So that's what is meant by collective. So what I'm trying to say here is that these are the ways through which multilateral institutions are organized. You cannot treat multilateral institutions just as an organization. I'll come to the second point, that there are many multilateral institutions which are not formal in nature, where you do not have secretariat, but still they are considered very successful multilateral institutions. Say, for instance, APEC, India-Pacific Economic Forum. It does not have this a kind of formal treaty, but it is considered a very important, successful organization. On the other hand, you have WTO, which is a treaty-based organization. You have NATO, you have European Union, which is a treaty-based. So multilateral institution or multilateralism can just be the treaties, informal treaties among several countries. It can also be formal treaties among states. So that definition is important. But Krasner talks of distinguishing multilateral institutions. He defines regimes as implicit or explicit principles, norms, rules, and decision-making procedures which around which actors' interests converge in the area of international relations. So he talks of regimes, and regimes here is not the political regime that you talk of. Regime, according to constructivism, it refers to certain kind of the normative structure which you create by sharing the norms and the values and the principles. So that you need to remember. So these are the broader definition of the Western definition. But the most interesting part is not what I say till now. Most interesting part is coming now, where I consider this definition. Robert Cohen and Morse, they have written an article on 2014. I think in 2014, article is very well published. So they use the term contested multilateralism, and this contested multilateralism is extremely important from India's perspective, from Russia's perspective, because what is happening that the countries like India, South Africa, Brazil, they realize that the kind of importance that they should have been given in international institutions, they have not been given. Be it IMF, World Bank. How can you have the biggest country in the world, the largest country in the world, and they're not the member of Security Council? United Nations Security Council. How can you have a country which is not granted the membership of, say, nuclear supply group? So, India is a country which is a dissatisfied state. India thinks that it has not been given proper recognition and the role in international politics. So, as a dissatisfied state, India is trying to play a different role. Historically, also it played an important role and different role in the 90s, 1950s and 60s. I'll come to that in a minute. But even now, the much more useful definition for students of IR like you would be the idea of contested multilateralism rather than just the definition of multilateralism. Unfortunately, the most of the definition that I gave you, the Western definition, they do not take into account the non-Western institutions. If I ask you, give me a theory on multilateralism which talks about multilateralism of BRICS, you will not give me just even one answer. So there's a lack of universal definition of multilateralism, and that's why you need to chip in. You need to create understanding theory. I have written an article, but that's not enough. I need students like you to write more articles and develop the idea of multilateralism to make sense of non-Western multilateralism. All right. So what are the phases of India's multilateralism? Just 1 or 2 minutes. I'll take it here because it's important to understand from India's perspective. The first phase of multilateralism in India, and this is based on my article, which has been published by a journal, Roundtable, is from Routledge, London, and where I say that the first phase of this multilateralism, it can be treated from 1950 to or 1947 to 1961, where India had amazing faith. India had put a lot of faith on UN as an institution, and India was not trying to create any institution, and it was based on high ideals of Jawaharlal Nehru and high morality. The problem came because of 2-3 developments. The problem came because, on the issue of Kashmir, India was very confident that the United Nations Security Council, will support India because Pakistan was an aggressor, and India thought that they'll take a neutral stand and they'll support the case of India. Unfortunately, that didn't happen, and after that, India, and also what is happening that this China tested the nuclear weapon in I think 1964, and after that, the entire thing started changing, and India started developing multilateral ideas which are different from its previous faith on what you call this multilateral institution. India actually started pursuing a policy which is known as parallel institutionalization. And that is happening in the second phase, where you see that non-alignment movement, which became the lodestar of India's foreign policy. So non-alignment movement is being created. India became a very active member of G77 in that period. What it did, and that period is roughly from say 1971 or 1967, I use the term, 61 to 1991, so till the end of Cold War. But the first phase was very important. The question that comes to everybody's mind is, why did India go into creating the multilateral institution? So there are various, why did India try to create non-alignment movement and G77? All right. And third phase, which I referred to, the post-Cold War period, is from 1991 until now, where we started joining different sorts of organizations, and the policy, India's foreign policy, is known as multi-alignment policy. And during this period, India is joining all sorts of organizations, be it G20. India joined Quad, but at the same time, India also joined two important non-Western organizations, which is BRICS and Shanghai Cooperation Organization. So India is indiscriminately trying to multi-align with different kind of institutions. What India is not doing at this moment very actively is not pursuing the policy of what you call creating its own multilateral institution, and that it needs to do if India tries to project its power internationally, because Russia has done it, China has done it, US has done it forever, Soviet Union also did it. All right, so non-alignment movement, many times it was rhetorical, but the central politics in non-alignment movement was promoting the idea of what you call today Global South. It became a kind of policy where it said that I'll not be the part of any of the blocs, and I'll try to follow a policy which is known as being non-aligned. What happens after 1991, the shift is taking place from non-alignment to what you call as multi-alignment. That India, as I said, that is joining different sorts of organization. And not to say that non-alignment is, yes, non-alignment lost its relevance. In fact, it lost its relevance much before 1991, when India decided to sign the treaty, what you call Indo-Soviet Friendship Treaty of 1971. That is considered an important departure point for India's foreign policy. And India also did not criticize Soviet intervention in Afghanistan. So these were the points where India started taking aside. Why? The reason being that China, Pakistan, and United States, they came together against India, and India didn't have many choices. So India started, the relevance of NAM started fading away in 1970s, and then by 1991, it became completely irrelevant, to the extent that NAM meetings takes place even today, that Prime Minister doesn't go. Prime Minister participates only in the virtual NAM meeting. In one of the last few years, he has participated virtually, but never been to it. It doesn't send even the foreign minister. It's just the lower minister or the secretary who goes for the meeting. Also, the reasons, what I said, the faced with the war with 1962, nuclear test of China in 1964, Lopnur, and the axis of US, Pakistan, and China, that led to gradual shift in India's foreign policy in that period. So what I said, from non-alignment, we have shifted to what we call in the post-Cold period, a period of multi-alignment, where we are having US, Russia, China, and different multilateral institutions. C. Rajamohan, for instance, raises a very important, he says that the politics of India has shifted from what you call universalism of the weak, universalism of, say, United Nations, that is according to him, that's the policy of the weakest state, to internationalism of a powerful country. So there's a gradual shift. This about the BRICS, Brahmachalani is another scholar from who studied in JNU, who writes on strategic affairs. He said BRICS is an acronym without substance. So it's an acronym, and these scholars, guided by many of the Western ideas, they thought that BRICS will not be important. But what you see today, BRICS has become extremely important organization, and it has created a kind of threat even for the Western countries. For instance, what Trump said recently. Trump said that if BRICS creates a new currency, then we'll impose 100% tariff. Trump has started talking about taking steps against de-dollarization. He is clearly threatening all the countries of the BRICS that if you try to de-dollarize, I'll put 100% tariff on you. So BRICS has become now a threat for the Western countries. The countries, the media, the experts which were not taking this organization very seriously, because they thought that this organization is too diverse. If you talk of the BRICS, it doesn't resemble any other organization in the world. If I ask you what is the comparative organization like BRICS, you may not have any example except probably this what you call maybe sometimes it's compared with the G7, but G7 is a country. G7 is an organization which is all democracies, all Western countries, Western plus Japan, and they have certain kind of political uniformity. But when I talk of BRICS, you have a democracy like India, you have a communist state like China, you have a semi-presidential presidential system of Russia, in terms of climate, in terms of culture, in terms of whatever you call it, you don't have any similarity in terms of cultural, historical tradition, etc. So the question that comes to your mind, or it might come to your mind, is what unites BRICS? What is the glue factor in the BRICS, and why BRICS has become an important organization? And I'll talk about that in a minute. Okay, so one of the fundamental issues, one of the fundamental problems that I find why India is behaving like is going with the with different sorts of organization is the fundamental constant that India faces. One is the China factor, because if you are dealing with China, you simply cannot let Russia go to other side. You have to play the politics of defending. So India is willing to partner with the United States, but at the same time, India is not willing to give up its ties with Russia, and that's one of the fundamental constraints that India will face even in the next 20 years. So remember that India will have to pursue the policy of strategic autonomy. India will have to pursue the policy of what you call multi-alignment. It does not have geopolitical choices, and that's one of the fundamental constants that I face when it comes to dealing with the India's New Delhi's marginal role in international institutions, thanks to adversarial relation with the West during the Cold War, it turned so India is also suspicious towards the West. All right. Say, for instance, India is willing to partner with the United States. Today, a deal has been signed. I've written an article also, so I mentioned about that. Deal with Trump, very important deal in the sense that India is going to acquire the fighter aircraft F-35. India is going to have a very strong defense partnership. Already Limova, Beka, Konkasa, etc. It was signed by India with the United States in the previous Trump administration term. But at the same time, remember that India will not like to become a partner, an alliance, military alliance partner of United States. Be very clear about that. So even in the Quad, the reason Quad can never become a military alliance because India has said very clearly that we are willing to partner with you against China also, but we are not willing to become either a junior partner or a military alliance with the United States. So that's that is one of the reasons why India is engaging in a certain way with non-Western institutions. So this contested multilateralism is an important concept that you need to remember. And now I'm coming to the specific issue of what you call BRICS. BRICS, I'll talk about 3 points. One is why BRICS matter, BRICS from IR perspective, and India's interest in BRICS. So BRICS is the most significant organization that has been created by the non-Western countries in the post-Cold War period. Earlier, the non-alignment movement or G77, these were the important institutions. But now the BRICS has become if I ask you what are the institutions which are important from the non-Western perspective, you will not have too many examples. In that, BRICS is the most significant, most formidable organization which has been created in the post-Cold War period. But remember, from India's perspective, BRICS is not an anti-Western organization. BRICS is a non-Western organization, but it is not an anti-Western organization. And India has always been suspicious of the Western-led institutions, but India at the same time believes in liberal internationalism. India has never tried to subvert any of the Western institutions. For instance, United Nations or the IMF or the World Bank, it has voiced its concern, it has created parallel institutions, but it has not tried to subvert Western institutions the way, for instance, China would like to do with many of the organizations of the West. So that again you need to remember. So this is the most formidable non-Western organization, and from the IR perspective, India is trying to create or be the part of parallel institutions because of the economic constant, because of the geopolitical constant that India said, and I just mentioned just now. BRICS is almost comparable to G7 economies. G7 economies would be roughly, I'm saying roughly, 26-27%, and the BRICS countries has already achieved that 27% economic target. And I'm not talking in terms of purchasing power parity. In terms of purchasing power parity, BRICS has already overtaken the G7 countries. And I'm also not counting the new members which have joined. And now BRICS has 10 members, including Indonesia. From the Indonesia, UAE, you have Ethiopia, Egypt, and then Saudi Arabia might join, but because of US pressure, Saudi Arabia is not joining. Iran has joined. So now you have 10 members, and there are more than 30 applicants who are willing to join the BRICS country. Why? Because they want to save themselves from the US pressure, the way US is playing a politics in, say, Egypt and Jordan. What US is saying, what Trump is saying to Jordan and Egypt, that please take the Palestinian refugee from Gaza. And these countries, they know that if you're not a part with a non-Western organization, you cannot protect yourself from the US pressure. And that's exactly the reason you have number of countries from Africa, Southeast Asia, and global, what you call today Global South, they're willing to become the member of BRICS. And that's the reason I said, you can question me later, that why non-Western organizations are thriving. You cannot just brush it by saying that all the multilateral institutions are fading away. Yes, Western institutions are fading away, but non-Western institutions are not fading away in my perspective. Yes, so
10 minutes.
Okay, sir has given 10 minutes. So this is some of the data for the students. If you want to locate us how the trade, inter-BRICS trade has increased from just 40 billion to more than 166 billion in last 10 years. How the population is, how the BRICS economy has grown in the last 10-15 years. And remember, mark my word that India's economy is going to be how much in the by what you call Viksit Bharat, the developed India by 2047. India's by conservative estimate, India's economy is going roughly. I'm taking the lowest possible indicator. It's going to be 35 trillion economy. I'm taking the lowest. It might be much more. And what does this 35 trillion mean? What is today India's GDP? 3.8 trillion roughly. By 2047, we are going to be 35 trillion economy. I'm taking the lowest point, which means double the size of Chinese economy today. So when you're thinking of multilateralism, when you're thinking of your academic scholarship, think in those terms also, that why it matters and why you need to create multilateral institutions, keeping in mind the way India is growing. And China will also be a $70 billion economy, or maybe much more than that. Why am I saying that? I'm saying because in 1990, India's economy was only $270 billion economy. When you had the financial crisis, liberalization, etc., only $270 billion. And what has happened in 30 years? It has gone 10 times. So if you multiply 10 times from now to next 30 years, so it's very common target. Even when you do not grow for a few years, it's going to be 10 times bigger economy than what you have today. So 3.8 multiplied by 10 is going to be 38 trillion economy. I told you only 35. So for that kind of structure, you need a different kind of thinking. You need a different kind of institution which can carry forward India's national interest, but also it's not just the India first policy, but also it takes along the value, transcendental values, universal values that India is trying to promote in the global south and in the international politics. Western critiques, they dismiss, if you read, I just checked The Economist, one of the prominent voice of the Western voice. So what are the titles? That BRICS, it says, for instance, the BRICS is riven with tensions. Expansion does not mean stronger BRICS. Expansion would mean more influence of China. Future is bleak. So these are the kind of arguments were coming from the Western countries. But now what you see that even Trump has become conscious of the fact that BRICS might create. In my view, BRICS is not going to create. Let me tell you, the BRICS is not going to create currency. So don't be scared that Trump is going to put 100% tariff on Indian exports. BRICS economy, BRICS is not creating currency. President Putin in the last roundtable with the press, he said very clear that BRICS is not in a position to create this new currency, and India would not support Chinese currency being the referral point, being the main point, because India has issues with China, and Chinese currency will dominate if the new currency is created. So that's the reason India is not in favor of creating the BRICS currency. And Brazilian president, in fact, made this statement in one of his meetings in Spain or somewhere, that BRICS should create its own currency, but BRICS is not going to create currency in the next 2-3 years. That's what I can tell you. So why BRICS matter? I'll give you the main pointers. BRICS matter for India and also for Russia because of the strategic autonomy. For Russia, is Russia and China, they would like to become much more anti-Western, but India, Brazil, South Africa, they are democracies. They do not want to become this institution completely anti-Western institution. They know that they'll have to cooperate economically in terms of security, politics, etc. with the United States. So for them, it matters because it provides the middle ground between the two emerging powers. It creates it gives a kind of strategic autonomy where you can operate with different powers in global politics. So it matters because of strategic autonomy. It matters because it's a geopolitical necessity. If you why it matters? Because if you are not the member of, say, for instance, BRICS, what will happen? Russia, Pakistan, and China will come together and they'll create an alliance against you, and they'll stop your entry in Central Asia. They'll also stop your entry in West Asia. And from here to, if you see from here, Pakistan till Turkey, most of the countries, they have very close ties with Russia and China. So you have to, geopolitically, it's very important for India. and it's also important for Russia. Russia is also trying to, let me tell you, and in no unclear terms, that Russia also tries to soft balance China through making India a member of BRICS and Shanghai Cooperation Organization. And India, as you said, is the founding member of BRICS, but kind of joined later the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. So this is important for India and Russia for what you call is a geopolitical necessity for both the countries. Yeah, and again, India doesn't want to become Ukraine. Ideally, there is a possibility that US would like India to play the role the way Ukraine played the role for the Biden administration against Russia. So India doesn't want to become Indian policy should never be subordinated to the US interest in Indo-Pacific. So we have to maintain strategic autonomy. We have to have our own national interest, and we should be part of institutions which matter to us and not guided by anybody else. BRICS talks about reform multilateralism, be it United Nations Security Council, be it voting percentage in IMF, World Bank, or say WTO, etc. Climate change. So for India, this what you call reform multilateralism matters. Even when there was just 2 days back, there was an artificial intelligence summit between India and France co-chairing, and then 68 countries joined, China included. The 2 countries that didn't join. The 2 countries that didn't sign, one is United States, second one is UK. Why? Because they want to have their own artificial intelligence companies which are super powerful, but they do not want to be constrained by the other regulations which are coming from countries like India and Europe. So they said that there's too much of data regulation in Europe, so they would not like to sign it. They said that because China has signed it, so it would not like to align with China, and that's why the UK and US they didn't sign this what you call artificial intelligence joint statement, which was issued in Paris just 2 days back. BRICS is also non-interventionist. These countries, if you see China, Russia, India, Brazil, etc., they focus on non-interventionist foreign policy. US has always been promoting, US has always been intervening militarily and politically in other countries. You have color revolutions, you have regime change, and India and China and Russia, they're against that kind of policy. So sovereignty, what Russia calls it, the concept of sovereign democracy, where you have to be sovereign and you have to be democratic. Although democracy is a rhetoric, but sovereignty is an important issue for the BRICS country, and they do not want any interference from the Western countries. So it matters because of that. And now coming to this, the second aspect, Russia and India, they're also cooperating in what you call Shanghai Cooperation Organization. Shanghai Cooperation Organization primarily focuses on Central Asian issues. It's an Eurasian organization. It's a security organization, but the focus is Central Asia. And India, as you know, India, Pakistan, and Iran, they became member 2017 onwards. They joined. And Shanghai Cooperation Organization plays a very important role in the politics of Central Asia, the 3 evils of secessionism, radicalism, separatism, etc. So for that, and India was requested by Russia to join, partly because Russia is also concerned about the rising Chinese influence in Central Asia. So for soft balancing, to balance economically and politically, Central Asian states as well as Russia would like India to remain active in Central Asian politics, and that's why you have this Shanghai Cooperation Organization. Also, just touch upon, I'm not going into detail, India is also negotiating with the Eurasian Union. I met this joint secretary, and he said that how they are negotiating on the issues of India Eurasian Union. You know, this the Russia promoted organization, and Eurasian Union China is also not the member, because Russia is also concerned that China will start dumping its products in Eurasia, especially in Central Asia, if it signs a free trade agreement with Eurasian Union. But India is negotiating, and in my view, it is in the benefit of India and Russia both, and countries of Central Asia, if they become a member of Eurasian Union. Eurasian Union would be something like European Union, where you'll have free flow of at least goods and services, if not people. Conclusion. What is coming to the final slide here? What is the first thing that I need as a student of IR multilateralism in India, that you need to redefine the idea of multilateralism, the concept of multilateralism, because the most of the definitions are Western in nature. They are not universal. They target primarily, most of the definitions have emerged from what you call the European Union, or say for instance United Nations Security Council, etc. So you need to understand, you need to define it differently from your perspective. And when you are defining, you should not be giving the fragmented definition of multilateralism. You should be trying to give universal transcendental definition of what you call multilateralism. So that's the first request from all of you when you write or speak about it. The second, India is yet to develop its own brand of multilateralism. Now, what kind of democracy, diversity, and development (DDD)? That's a very ideal model through which you can promote the idea of democracy, idea of India's what you call multilateralism. But also that it comes somewhere in conflict with what you call cultural nationalism. Because if you focus too much on cultural nationalism, your neighbors will run away, other countries will run away, because if you start treating your country as the first, there's no other country in the world which will treat its own country as second. So that becomes a challenge if you pursue very hardcore nationalistic first, nation first policy. And Western institutions are failing because President Trump is pursuing that nation first policy. And that's a major challenge that you need to keep. So when you theorize, please keep those ideas in mind, which will be accepted by the other people in the world. It will have to promote its own transcendental. And India and Russia, as I said, there is a necessity, but also there is a convergence of interest, not in terms of just national interest, but also convergence of interest in terms of geopolitics, in terms of history, in terms of ideas, in terms of sovereignty, sovereign democracy, non-intervention, non-Western ideas which need to be promoted. So because of these reasons, I believe that the multilateral cooperation between India and Russia is going to prosper. It has a very good future. And you'll see that BRICS, at least for the next few years, BRICS is going to be much more important organization that you see today. So let me stop it here and I'll take your questions.
Well, there couldn't have been a more focused and pointed summary of BRICS and multilateralism, and the way Dr. Rajan explained how India's own understanding and approach and policy towards multilateralism has changed from the days when we were organizing Asian Relations Congress, we were supporting Bandung Afro-Asian Congress, we were supporting G77 1964, we were supporting South-South cooperation and New International Economic Order 1974. So from there on, which had a clear anti-West tinge and pronouncement, from there on to today's multilateralism, where India, on the one hand, is very much a part of these non-Western multilateral organizations, but is trying to moderate their focus from becoming anti-Western, while at the same time agreeing with them on many of the other issues which West does not want to take up. So that has been India's policy. Floor is open. Pointed questions. We will end at 6. Yes.
Hello, Professor. Thank you for the crispy yet wonderful session. My question, I have two brief questions. One is that, can you please share some comments on what would be the Trump effect on the BRICS, good or bad, or anything else? Second is that, you give it to me.
Second is?
Second is that, sir, how do you, as you said that you pointed out the Indians' multi-alignment policy, and yesterday also Varun Sahni sir also talking about multi-alignment along with multi-engagement. So how would you say that this is not that a master or a jack of all trades is a master of none, trying to be everywhere and you will reach nowhere? So yeah, these two, sir.
At the back.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir. My name is Harshit Kumar Kasauda. I am a research scholar in Center for Russian and Central Asian Studies. Sir, considering your argument that India should have a regional organization of its own in order to thrive in the world, do you think that India's boycott of Islamabad summit of SAARC is a strategic mistake? Because recently India has participated in the SCO summit as a good member. What our external affairs minister has argued that we are participating as a good member. So do you think that it is a strategic mistake?
Prince, you can pass it on that side. Yes, yes.
So my question is like,
Name and then question.
my name is Aman sir. I'm a PhD scholar in Center for Russian and Central Asian studies. So my question is, if Western-led multilateralism is in decline, does that mean that we are moving towards more effective and equitable global order, or like perhaps we are witnessing a fragmentation that could lead to greater instability? If like alternative institutions like BRICS and AIIB are the future, then what prevents them from replicating the same power imbalance and elite governance, which is like currently happening, which usually that critiques associate with the Western institutions?
Can you elaborate a bit more? Just tell
Yes,
me.
sir. Usually, these institutions, Western multilateral institutions, are being associated, being governed by the elites. So that could happen same, like in the case of the East also. So how can we prevent
By
that?
elite, what do you mean?
Usually, is being governed by those countries who are like economically.
Rich.
Yes.
All right. I hope you got it at the back. Yes. There. यहाँ पहले and then.
Thank you, sir, for this wonderful session.
Identify yourself.
My,
Name?
sir, I am Satyam from School of International Studies. My question is, sir, how countries like China and Russia, who still believe in this quote-unquote anachronistic concept of realms of influence, like Russia in the Eastern Europe and China in East Asia and Southeast Asia, how do they balance between the more pragmatic principles of like realms of influence and other principles such as maintaining and respecting national sovereignty of other countries, which you also argued in your lecture? Thank you.
Yes, yes.
Good evening, sir. My name is Shalini and I am doing PhD at Center for Russian and Central Asian Studies. So my question is, as we see there is difference in approach of how the BRICS nations perceive West. Like if we see Russia and China, they are anti-Western, and if we see Brazil, India and South Africa, they are non-Western. So how the members among themselves, they come to a point of convergence, or how there is a balancing act on this approach? Thank you.
This would be maybe the last one. Here.
Thank you, sir. I am Liaquat Ahmed Bhatt from University of Kashmir, Srinagar, Central Asian Studies. Sir, my question is, we have an old proverb that a friend of everyone is friend of none. Yesterday, even today, we have gone through the observations where now it is called as the BRICS is dead. And there is one other thing that we have been given the reciprocity of tariffs. Rather than being part of the all organizations, why don't we shun path and have a deal with at the local level and found a different organization with our immediate neighbors, although not through conflict resolution, or we can have the conflict management, where we have a focus on human resource development with arms disarmament, rather being part of the different defense deals that are going on. Thank you.
All right. Last one here.
आज नहीं हो पाएगा अगर इतना लेंगे तो.
No. Just summarize.
So my question is, so I'm Harshita Pandey and I'm doing my PhD from Russia Central Asia study. So I just want your take on, we are talking about redefining multilateralism and India's approach to it. Do you think that India's presidency G20 summit, so post G20 summit, India has added constructively to that definition, or where do you see that we are going? So we were something constructive.
Added to the definition of what?
Of multilateralism, or something constructive that India has done during its presidency. So, yes.
That's enough. You can summarize in 10 minutes.
Do I have 10 minutes?
Yes, you do have.
So first question is Trump's effect on BRICS. Trump is clearly not happy with the BRICS, and ideally Trump would like BRICS to shut down its activities. But again, that is not going to happen. Trump cannot today completely threaten either China or India, or Biden administration did threaten Russia. Nothing happened to Russia, and now Trump is willing to negotiate with Russia on the issue of Ukraine, and almost agreeing to most of the critical demands that Russia has made. Trump's main focus is tariff and trade, remember. So Trump will not encourage any kind of development of currency. Trump will also not see the US dominance is primarily because of the dominance of dollar, economic terms. If the dominance of dollar goes away, then US stands nowhere. Why will people from India go and work in Silicon Valley if rupee and dollar becomes, say, the same, or the value of currency goes down? So dollar is the mechanism through which United States has the financial hegemony and dominance. So it would not like BRICS to have anything which kind of cuts down the impact of dollar in the international economy. What is happening, unfortunately, Trump is also making arguments without understanding a lot of things. BRICS is not actually making an alternative currency for the time being. Putin has said, India has said very clearly. What BRICS is doing, that 95% of trade today between India and Russia and China is taking place in what? Ruble and renminbi, local currency, national currency. What is happening between India and Russia? The maximum amount, 70 to 80% of trade now is not in dollar, not in any other currency, it's in rupee ruble. That's why Russia has accumulated a lot of rupees in India, and it doesn't know what to do with that. So India is saying that you please invest it, or we'll export more. Whatever will happen later. So Trump cannot do much to BRICS. Unfortunately, the power politics is changing. The global politics today, as I said, economically has already shifted to Asia Pacific. The countries in Asia Pacific have become much more important than the Western countries. The West, as you see, is in a clear decline, and the BRICS and the institutions like BRICS, they have started funding. As Professor Nikulin was showing, the BRICS is funding projects in where? New Development Bank that is funding projects in connecting roads in Bihar, rural road in Bihar, Chennai Metro. So BRICS has started funding, and it has now mechanism to fund a lot of projects in Africa. It is already funding lots of. So BRICS is going to be financially and economically important. BRICS is not a military organization. If somebody asks you what kind of organization, BRICS is not a military organization at all. It's a kind of economic and political organization, not a security organization as such. Trump can't do much to BRICS, let me tell you. India's multi-alignment, jack of all trade, reaching nowhere. Actually, that's not the case. Two arguments. If you have a big, diverse country like India, you have multiple interests. You have your trade interest with the US, you have security interest with the US against China, but at the same time, you have interest in Pakistan, you have interest in Afghanistan and Central Asia. So if you have multiple interests, you will have to negotiate with multiple parties. And one thing that India would not like to happen is the emergence of, again, a new bipolar world order. Russia also doesn't want to do that, doesn't want that to happen. That US and China dominating the world order economically, militarily, or in artificial intelligence. So India and Russia both would not like that situation to happen. For that, you need a multipolar world order, because till the time you do not become the superpower, you bide and hide. You pursue a policy which you align with number of countries to create a new balance, and that's what India is doing. The second, Harshit's point of India's boycott of SAARC in Pakistan, is it a strategic mistake? I think no, not really. Because see what India thinks of SAARC, that all these smaller tiny countries, they gang together against India. So India was not very happy with the big powers behave differently. Remember that. The smaller powers, middle powers, they always look for multilateral institutions, but India is the hegemon in South Asia. If you disagree, you can ask me later. So India follows the same policy that that many of the superpowers follow in other countries. So India would not like Pakistan to be a disruptor, and that's exactly the reason India created BIMSTEC. That I create with Bangladesh, in Myanmar, and other countries, and let Pakistan hold its grudges, and I'm not willing to. So it was not a strategic mistake. Ideally, I would like India and Pakistan to come together, because if Pakistan comes with India, you can have direct route from here to Central Asia and Russia. But Pakistan will never allow that to happen. Just keep that in mind. And the politics. But remember that there is a huge difference between Pakistan and India today, because the question was asked earlier to Professor Nikulin, Pakistan and India, Russia, etc. So Pakistan's economy is what India's economy was 30 years earlier, 270, less than $500 billion. And India is 3.8. And India is growing. The skill and India is being recognized internationally. So Pakistan will not be in position to compete at least for the 15, 20 years, but it will remain an important part in South Asia without any doubt. Aman, are we moving towards effective Western institution governed by rich countries? See, yes, BRICS is a club of rich countries of the global South. Rich non-Western is a club of, why for instance Sudan is not a member, why Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, they are not the member, BRICS came into being because of this growth as a factor, because all the countries of BRICS were growing even when the Western countries, European countries were not growing at all. So it's an organization. Sometimes people are asking that why Russia is member when it's not growing after 2014. People started raising this question. But yeah, Russia is important because it's an important part in Eurasia. And BRICS essentially is if you see the BRICS, India is the hegemon in South Asia, China is the hegemon in East Asia, Russia is the hegemon in Eurasia, Brazil in Latin America, South Africa in Africa. So this is the country, this is a club of rich and powerful nations. BRICS is not an organization like NAM or G77, where you have the different kind of politics. So it is a country of definitely rich countries of the global south. Rich, I mean powerful, not necessarily rich, but the powerful countries of the global south. But it is also expanding. And one of the problems with the BRICS was that it didn't have any country which was Islamic. So what it did recently, it has now UAE, it has now Iran, Saudi Arabia. Egypt has mixed population, but yeah, Egypt is again a very important Islamic country, and also Islamic population is there in Ethiopia also. And what else it added? BRICS now is become the most powerful energy club of the world. If you see all the countries, most of the countries are energy producer today, except the US, which is again a major important country. So you will control energy, you will control the different kind of politics. Only thing is that you need to cut down or you need to minimize the mismatched aspiration that many of the countries has. If you can do that, probably BRICS will remain very powerful. Satyam has China to balance influence in East Asia. See, again, it is it does try to balance, this some of the politics in what you call East Asia, politics in West Asia also. But the major reason why BRICS was created, because it had issues with the multilateral institution, it had issues with the Western politics, it had issues on climate change with the Western countries. So they came together, and when they started funding the projects, they said that we'll not follow the policy of IMF and the World Bank, and will support countries without any conditionality. And the decision in the BRICS is made by consensus. So it's not just one or two countries making any decision, it's the consensus-based decision. So these were some of the differences which are there. But yeah, they will try to continue to play important politics, important role in the regional. Shalini, anti-Western, non-Western, where is the balance of convergence? How do they decide? And so even in the BRICS, there is an organization called IBSA, IBSA, right? So that's a kind of block which is of the democracies. And then you have RIC, Russia, India, China, which are economically very powerful and very important countries of the global south today. So when it comes to decision making, there are issues. Russia and China at this point of time would like, before Trump, Russia and China together, they would like BRICS to become anti-Western organization. But now Russian politics will also change, because Russia is and President Trump and President Putin, they're also already having ties, negotiations on the issue of Ukraine. And what US is trying to do, US is trying to bring Russia on its side so that it can contain China. So now the politics again for the next few years will change. We don't know what will happen in the future, but for the time being, the politics is going to change again. And Putin is already talking to President Trump, and US has agreed to all the demands of Russia practically. The CNN and the Western liberal media is saying that US has surrendered to Putin's demand. Surrendered is the term being used there. Liaquat ji from Kashmir, friend of everyone is friend of none. That may not be true. Sometimes you have these phrases and you have these statements which can be countered by the statements. How do you trust United States? Pakistan trusted United States. What is the status now? China was with United States. What is happening now? Russia trusted United States. What is happening now? Russia in 1990s was with United States on all the issues. So can you trust? And the same thing cannot be said about India, Russia. All right. So your friend, those are the countries which are changing the friends. India continued to have good ties, and during the Cold War politics, because of politics, India didn't have good relations with the United States because Pakistan was being supported.
Last question.
Reciprocal tariffs. Last.
I hope this is not very important.
No. Reciprocal tariff. Yes, President Trump, just before the meeting with Prime Minister Modi, he used the term reciprocal tariff, that I'll put as much tax on you as you do it in our imports. But again, tariff is something which will be negotiated. In my view, that falls in the domain of negotiation. It's not an intractable issue, and I'm sure that India and United States will negotiate, and it has already agreed to negotiate. Please read my article in Indian Express today. Big countries have multiple. Disarmament, sir. I think that debate is over. No country is willing to go for disarmament, and they'll pursue to militarize in the future. So that's the reality. Harshita, post G20, has India added to multilateralism? Yes, India has contributed to multilateralism. One good thing about the present administration is that it has not walked out of multilateral institutions. As I said, that India has not tried to subvert also multilateral institutions. Be it Paris climate change, India is not withdrawing. Artificial intelligence with Macron, France, India is willing to participate. India is also actively participating in BRICS and Shanghai Cooperation Organization. So India has added to the multilateral. In fact, because of the power transition, India should be taking much more responsibility in terms of supporting the multilateral institution. Because of its lack of diplomatic resources, because of its lack of resources, it has certain constraints, but the world is expecting India to play important role. Be it the Western countries, why US, Modi is the fourth leader to be invited in the White House. Why global South countries are having separate summit with India. So they are looking for some leadership, and India should take the responsibility, and you guys should develop theories based on those broader understandings. Thank you.
Well, with that, it's almost 6. So we end the session here. Thank you very much, Professor Nikulin. Thank you very much, Dr. Rajan.